So I bought a new Mac, but the question for me was, which Mac should I buy? I've been a long time Mac user and I've always used headless Macs, but does that mean that I would do the same thing again? Especially as, if you're a pro user, the choices are slightly limited at the moment. So before I reveal which Mac I've bought, let's have a trip down memory lane. This is a Mac Mini. It's a first generation Mac Mini from 2005 and it was my very first Mac. It ran a PowerPC processor, so this was before Apple switched to Intel, and it's a G4 processor running at 1.25 gigahertz. It very first shipped running Mac OS X Panther. Remember that? Yeah, if you've been a long time Mac user, you might remember that one. And I loved it. It was enough for me to decide that this was the operating system for me. So it wasn't very long before I bought something else. This is a Mac Pro 1.1 released in August 2006. It came shipping with Mac OS X Tiger. It had a 1333 megahertz processor, but what was really great about this machine and why I used it as my main desktop for 7.5 years is because you could take the side off. You simply pull this lever like that, and then the side comes off like this. And then inside, yes, this is incredibly dusty because I probably haven't opened this for years. Yeah, wow, it's really dusty. But inside, this is the important thing, it has a load of drive bays so you can plug in internal storage. You have riser cards. I was going to take these out, but I won't because of all the dust, to put in memory modules. And also you can put in full-length PCIe cards as well. This was a really popular Mac. You could even update the processor if you had a little bit of gumption about you. But the great thing about this machine was its upgradability, and it's why people still love it today. I have to say, I still think the design looks good, even in 2018. This was a mega machine and I loved it. But these things come to an end. It got slow and dated and I needed to replace it. This is a Mac Pro 6.1, released on December the 19th, 2013, although I ordered mine on release day, but didn't arrive until February the 3rd, 2014. This is a completely different form factor, as you can see, and while the previous generation was affectionately known as the cheesegrater, this one was rather disparagingly known as the trashcan, for rather obvious reasons. Now, at the time of recording in November 2018, this is the current version of the Mac Pro, and this has been my machine for nearly 5 years. Now, although it's generally hated because it hasn't got much internal storage, in fact, it hasn't got any way of expanding the storage, it hasn't got any way pretty much of expanding anything, it actually is a really clever piece of engineering. It's got one big fan at the top, and that's it. It's virtually silent, and actually it's been a pretty good machine. It's seen me through these last few years, and it's only recently that I've started getting a few issues with GPU kernel panics and that sort of thing that might have something to do with this beast behind, which has also stopped working. If we take the lid off, then you can see the major, if I can find the button, here it is, then you can see the major flaw in the Mac Pro, and that is this internal design. And the problem with it is that it has this sort of triangular layout. It has cards in this triangle shape, and the problem is that two of these cards are graphics cards, and Apple were banking on people using the GPU, or rather the software using the GPU to process huge amounts of data. Kind of hasn't happened really, and there is some compromises to be made in software terms if you're offloading a lot of data to a graphics card and then bringing it back again. It's really just quicker in the long run, most of the time, to just have a CPU with lots of cores to do all that processing for you. It's just the way of doing it. So, there was a bit of a design flaw with this, and also I think Apple said that they backed themselves into a thermal corner. The problem was that there was no way that this particular design was going to see them through into the future, and I think the fact that people weren't able to upgrade it had also, I think, rang alarm bells in Cupertino. But there we are, there is the Mac Pro 6.1, and this has now brought us bang up to date. So why on earth am I thinking of changing? So we've seen the Macs that I've owned up until now, And my plan originally had been to wait to see what the 2019 Mac Pro was going to look like. My thought process was simply this: if I want to change my machine after about 5 years, and 2019 would be 5 years since I bought the trashcan Mac Pro, then it makes sense to wait and see what the full range of products are available at that time. So we would have known then, probably about mid-2019 at a best guess, what the Mac Pro was like. We'd know already then that the Mac Mini had been updated, and of course the iMac line and all the MacBooks and MacBook Airs and all the rest of it. So we'd have a full picture and then could make a really informed decision about which way to jump. Of course, needs might send you in a different direction, and that's what happened to me. In mid-November 2018, my 4K monitor just suddenly decided to die on me, which isn't very good. It's an LG monitor. It hadn't been a cheap thing to buy, and I'd only had it about 3.5 years. I could think about getting it repaired, but even to somebody to look at the monitor to repair is going to cost best part of £100 probably just to touch it, and that's no guarantee it's going to be fixed. So then I had the other problem then of thinking, well, if I buy a replacement monitor, I won't be able to plug it into my Mac Pro, because the Mac Pro is Thunderbolt 2, the new machine will probably be Thunderbolt 3, or then I could get an adapter, but they're not very cheap. Anyway, I had all sorts of thinking, all sorts of thoughts going through my mind. What should I do? Should I try and get the 4K monitor repaired? And then of course there's the problem with the trash can has been throwing out kernel panics occasionally as well. So then, well, do I get that looked at? Or was that being caused by the dodgy monitor? Anyway, what I decided to do, as you've already told from the title of this video, is to bring forward my 2019 replacement and buy something in November 2018. So what was I going to get? Another headless Mac. Well, I looked at the new Mac Mini, and it's actually a really appealing looking machine, but the base configuration is really, in my opinion, not worth it. It's not powerful enough. You need to be able to start adding some of the build to order options to get something that's going to last for a few years. And then if you start going down the custom order route, then the delivery times start to knock back 2 or 3 weeks. I clearly needed something quicker than that. I also thought that I started to look as if you put a decent spec together for the Mac Mini, and then you add to that a decent screen, because my screen's died, so I'll have to get another one of those. Suddenly the price really goes up. Now I do like the headless Mac, but I started to think to myself, well, actually, if I'm going to get a reasonably powerful Mac and I need a new monitor, then you're probably one step ahead of me. It's worth looking at the iMac. I've never owned an iMac before. I've never really liked the all-in-one design. But the main reason I didn't like the all-in-one was because of the thermal constraints of the components that were in there. You couldn't push some of those components, some of those processors very hard before it would be blowing a lot of hot air out, and I wouldn't like that because I like to push the machines to do a reasonable amount. However, I'm not a high-end videographer working with red raw footage, and I don't need the 10 or 18 core iMac Pro. Just the base level 8 core iMac Pro would actually do the job for me quite well. And if you get an off-the-shelf configuration, which actually isn't that bad, a terabyte SSD and 32 gigs of RAM is fine, is pretty good, then I could get that the very next day. So that's what I did. I placed my order, and then less than 24 hours later, an iMac Pro arrived. Hooray! My very first iMac, I can't believe it. The space grey look is fantastic. I really like the space grey. The keyboard, of course, being wireless, and the low profile keyboard, I've heard mixed reviews on that. Some people absolutely love it, and other people aren't quite so sure. Me, I'm finding that my fingers are flying across this keyboard. I really like it. The Space Grey Magic Mouse, again, looks really nice. It's still got the problem with the charging port on the bottom, which means you've got to kind of turn it over and plug that in to charge it up, which is a bit of a design flaw, really. It'd be nice if it was on the back somewhere so you could plug that in and charge it up, but that's been the problem with the Magic Mice ever since the all-in-one design of that has come out. It's replacing my old Magic Mouse, which was one of those ones with the battery compartment on the bottom, which was clearly designed by an idiot, because that cover over the battery compartment kept falling off. It was really poor. So it's nice to have the new equipment, the new space grey look, and the machine itself is just great. That monitor is out of this world. I didn't think I'd notice much difference between my old LG 4K and the new 5K. However, it's a smaller monitor. I've gone from a 31-inch widescreen down to a 27-inch display, but the 5K in a slightly smaller, so all those pixels in a slightly smaller screen really is quite noticeable actually. As far as the colour gamut goes, yeah, it's really nice on the iMac Pro. That's very similar to the LG monitor actually, so I don't notice a lot of difference with the colour gamut. However, the clarity of the screen is super smashing. Yes, this is an expensive Mac. Wow, it's cost a lot of money. However, if I compare it with the cost of my Mac Pro, the Mac Pro plus the LG 4K monitor together actually cost me more money than the 5K iMac Pro. So that's quite interesting. Yes, it's a lot of money to spend out at once. When you factor in all of the equipment, you factor in all the bits that are there, it's actually, I think, for me, quite good value. After all, it pays my bills. So, there's a decision made. In November 2018, I've bought an iMac Pro. It's true that it's been out now for 11 months, so we're probably closer to an update than we are from the original release. But when you're a user like me that uses it for their day-to-day work, uses it to earn money, to put food on the table and pay the mortgage, well, needs must. I needed to buy a machine and I needed it now, and I was able to speak to Apple and get it the very next day, which was fantastic. So I'm very pleased. I will no doubt be blogging and vlogging about my experiences with the iMac Pro over the coming weeks and months, and let me know what you think. Have I made a mistake? Do you think I really should have perhaps tried to repair my old equipment? Should I have rented something for a few months to see what the Mac Pro replacement is going to be like? Or have I just, done a good thing? Why not? You only live once, let's enjoy ourselves. You let me know what you think, I know you will. And that's it from me. Hope you've enjoyed the video. You can follow me on social media, and you can of course read my blog, and I hope I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.